B-boy. From the old to the new, still a B-boy. Too bold for the school, still a B-boy. East Coast to the West, B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed.
What's up, B-boys and B-girls? This week we're heading to Detroit to talk about a true underground legend. Now, people debate who was the actual first person to create what would be known as horrorcore, but there's no denying that this MC was one of the first, and he even put his own unique spin on it. He called it acid rap. He completely changed the landscape of the Detroit hip-hop scene, helped influence countless artists. So this week, we're talking about the Unholy Black Devil, top 10 Esham songs. This is for all the suicidalists. Joining me, as always, I got Raven Hunter, Diz Mega, and Brad Sadler is back too to talk about a Detroit legend. So I'm going to start ourselves at number 10. And, I always use number 10 as my little personal favorites that I just, this is for the younger Chris. And this is definitely for the younger Chris. So I'm going to 1992. He had that double album, Judgment Day. But I'm going with Volume 1, and I Met This Little Girlie. I left so many classics off this list to get this on here. But as a kid, I love this song. The way they flipped, It's Tricky by Run DMC, I thought was so cool, especially at that point in time. I had a girlfriend who moved to Novi, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit, and she would give me that's how I found out about Esham. She gave me the Boomin' Words tape, and by the time I heard Boomin' Words, Judgment Day had just came out, so I went and got Judgment Day right away and just did both volumes. I got them all at once, and I loved I Met This Little Girlie. Great sex stories, just a fun song, and one of the first hip-hop double albums I can think of. So he was even groundbreaking then, and at the time he's like 16 years old or whatever. It's amazing the music he put out as a minor. So I Met This Little Girlie. Her pussy hairs were curly. Number 10, Raven, what was your number 10?
My number 10 was on the same album from 92, Volume 1 Day. It was Mama Was a Junkie. I always like that beat. It's real smooth. And it's just a cool story. I always like real sounding tracks. And I don't know, I just always felt like that track kind of stood out on that album for me.
That was an honorable mention, which I have a lot of. So I'm counting on y'all to get these honorable mentions brought up. But I agree. That's real quick, Volume 1 or 2, what's your favorite volume?
Probably Volume 1. I like Volume 1 a lot.
And that's interesting because a lot of people say 2, but I've always been more on the number 1 side, but they're both great. So we're just nitpicking. No, that's a good one. Diz, what is your number 10?
Number 10, Game of Death from Kill the Fetus. 1993
Nice.
album, of course, the infamous Kill the Fetus record with Nodis on there. They all just kill it, man. Like, I just love all their verses on here, man. I don't even know if they were on top of their game yet, but man, they were getting there. And Game of Death, I love the beat on there. It's just crazy, it's unforgettable. Mastermind is just like a menace on here, and TNT, man, he's a menace. But Esham, this is his record, man. And all I wanted to do was hear some Esham back in the day, man. And he was really the star of the show, of course, man. I always felt like he was the best member. But this song is a classic. Number 10, man. It really axed out a lot of other classics, but I had to put some Kill the Fetus on there, and Game of Death was my top track.
And I agree. The beat is a really great beat. And when Esham comes in on the third verse, he does really kill it and show he's a step above. No, that's a good one. That's a good pick. Brad, hit us with some old school Esham. What's your number 10?
All right, well, number 10 is going to be the latest album that I went to for this list, and then we'll go with the old school Esham after that. Okay, so anyways, number 10. So I'm going to be mostly talking about Esham early on, but I went up to Bruce Wayne album, and I picked the You Better Ask Somebody remix. I love the sample. That Michael Jackson song, Rock With You, is actually my favorite Michael Jackson song. So it's kind of like a guilty pleasure, just kind of hearing Esham and Mastermind and TNT rap over that track. It's one that I play over and over again, especially when I'm just wanting to hear something really pleasurable and kind of catchy to my ears. So that's my number 10. I had to dump a lot of songs to put that on there, but that's the latest one.
That was on my honorable mention. Both versions of Better Ask Somebody, but the remix is kind of fun. You know, it's kind of a posse track, but it made my honorable mentions because so I'm glad that got some love. I think Bruce Wayne really gets forgotten for whatever reason. It's kind of was a bridge between male dominance and Dead Flowers, and you can kind of hear that. It's like he's kind of transiting. But we're not going to talk about Bruce Wayne. We're going to go to 1993. My number 9 off of Kill the Fetus, which if you would have asked me 20 years ago, what's your favorite Esham album, I would have said Kill the Fetus. If you asked me in 2023, what's my favorite Esham album, I'm going to say Kill the Fetus. It's always been my favorite. I can't deny it. And I'm going with the song, I Thought You Knew. I love this song. It's slower, more laid back. I love the vibe. I always kind of compare this to Closed Casket had a song called Make You Wanna Holla or Make Me Wanna Holla. It's kind of the same vibe. And in this era, he always had one kind of like that, a kind of on the reel type track. I love the sample and the hook. It's simple, but fits perfectly. And it was either this or Sunshine off the same album. And this just edged it out. I love his flow in this one. So I Thought You Knew, one many people don't talk about, but just always got me. Kill the Fetus, number 9. Raven, what do you got?
I went to 96's Dead Flowers, and I went with Charles Manson. It's a little bit on the shorter side, but it's one of my favorite beats on that album, and Esham flows really well. I think arguably, in my opinion, Dead Flowers might be E kind of at his best flow, because he's very consistent on that album. Where in some of Tongues and later albums, he's all over the fucking place. So I think that Dead Flowers is probably overlooked by a lot of people, because I hear way more about like the Kill the Fetus and Closed Casket, but I always thought Dead Flowers was kind of him at his best flow wise.
Number 9, Diz, what do you got?
Number 9, I went all the way up to 2005. A1 Yola, there's a track called Coca-Cola. I know there's a lot of hit or miss on the psychopathic era, but I listened to this album back in the day a lot, and there were a few gems on here, but Coca-Cola, I think it's fun. It's pretty gangsta, of course, and Dead Boy comes in later, and that's always dope to hear some Dead Boy, and it was just kind of a throwback for back then. And I love the beat, man. Yeah, we do it all day, and that beat is just out there, man. It sounds like something Esham made, and I love it.
A cool thing about that album was it came with the DVD that had a video to every song on the album, which Ice-T did for Original Gangster. So I always linked those two together, which made me like the idea even more. And yeah, the psychopathic Esham was different, but there was a couple I really liked off that album. I probably liked more off of Repentance than A1 Yola, but that is a good beat. That is a fun song. So number 9, Brad, what do you got?
All right, so I got into Esham probably at the same time you did, Chris, when Judgment Day came out. I had just gotten into, I've talked about this before, I got into hip hop between Judgment Day and Kill the Fetus coming out. At least one EP, the Helter Skelter EP, and I actually saw Esham like dropping those off in the store. I got the Helter Skelter video from him when he dropped it off in the store. Like, no, actually, I got that at a concert. Like for them to bring it out of the van to sell it. But anyways, that fucking awesome, and it kind of like set the stage for Kill the Fetus, which I'm probably not going to have a lot of songs from Kill the Fetus on there. Those were much more influenced by what he really was into, like the Ghetto Boys and rock and roll. And you have all these like amazing rock samples, crazy lyrics. And to me, like the essence of Esham are those three. For I am picking Devil's Night off of the Helter Skelter EP, which is just a badass song. Devil's Night is cool because back then in Detroit, shit was wild on Devil's Night. Houses would burn. It was like a thing. And then Esham had the fucking song about it, which was, I think, as good, if not better, than Helter Skelter. So I put it on.
That was a good EP, and I'm gonna bring it up later again. But that's in that same era, he was dropping those 4-song EPs. Even in that era in general, hip hop, a lot of really good EPs coming out in the early to mid 90s in the hip hop world. All right, number 8. And we were talking about Dead Flowers before, so I'm going to go there. 1996's Dead Flowers. And I'm going with another personal favorite. What? The first song. I just love the hardcore, evil vibe. I'm always a sucker for dope first tracks off an album. And I never thought this would make my list, but the more I listen, the more I remember how much I love it. His slower flow, but it's how he's saying it lyrically above his average. And the overdubs are him whispering every line, which I just think it really sets the mood for the song. This beat and song just makes me want to get gangsta. It's just so dope. It's everything I would want from Esham. What just gets me every time. So it had to make it. What is your number 8, Raven? That's called transition right there.
So I'm staying on Dead Flowers for my second time in a row. I went with Would You Punk Ass? Would You Punk Ass? I love that song. I think it's a great beat. I love the way he flows on that song. It's just a really fun, classic sounding Esham song to me.
That was on my honorable mention, and Dice kills it too. I think that might be the first time we hear Dice on Real Life.
Dice, man, he was like my favorite member of that label when he was on that label. I love Dice.
No, that's a dope song. It was on my honorable mentions. And Drunken Masters, the third one on there, I believe. All right, number 8, Diz, what do you got?
Number 8 from Judgment Day, Volume 1. How do I plead to homicide?
Nice.
I love the beat on here. The sample's cool, fly like an eagle. And his storytelling is just awesome. This really, I got into this album later, but it was just like a reminder of how dope Esham actually was at storytelling. He's kind of underrated, or at least underappreciated at it. But back then he was doing some pretty wicked tales, just rhyming them. And then the sampling, the guy is like the best, most genius sampler ever. I mean, Close Casket, Dead Flowers, all of these records, just sample after sample, clips from the news or clips from old songs. And the guy just made classics out of them. It didn't sound like a mess. This song right here is just one of the purest, best Esham tracks, in my opinion, that he ever made. So How Do I Plead to Homicide? Love it.
That was my number 11. That was easily my number 11. Such a great tale. And you're right, the sampling and the beats, I mean, he's doing all this in-house. He's a teenager at the time. He doesn't get enough credit for the other things he was doing, the production, all that. It's actually incredible if you really think about it. I'm glad that made someone's list because it pained me. It hurt me in my soul to not have it on mine. Number 7, I'm going to 1994, and we're talking about dope EPs. What about Maggot Brain Theory? And I'm going with the title track, Maggot Brain Theory. And I think this era of Esham is my favorite. This is prime Esham. The ending of Judgment Night, Kill the Fetus, Closed Casket, Into Dead Flowers, that 4 years right there. I just think he was hitting on all cylinders. And I love this EP. At least the 3 dope songs. The intro is a throwaway, and Traces of My Blood Type is just kind of weird. But this era, so many dope EPs. And this is probably as much as I love Helter Skelter, Maggot Brain Theory is probably my favorite Esham EP. I cannot not hear this song and not rap along. Just love it. Maggot Brain Theory is my number 7. What's yours, Raven?
I went to 2001's Tongues, and I actually went with All Night Every Day with Heather Hunter and Kool Keith. I always really liked that beat, and I loved Kool Keith, so it was so just dope hearing Kool Keith with Esham. And Kool Keith really flowed really well to that beat too, which he's another one that I love that dude, but he is so hit or miss with how he flows. And even Heather Hunter, she's it's silly, but she kind of flows. She held her own a little bit. So I just always thought that was a really fun track.
I put it on my honorable mentions too, because I remember I never thought in a million years, being an old school hip hop head, but also being familiar with Esham, that I would hear Esham and Kool Keith together. But
Same.
It kind of makes sense. They're both very unique And you're right, Cool Keith's catalog can be brutal, but it can also be
Everywhere.
amazing, kind of like Esham, especially the second
Yeah.
half. And you're right, Cool Keith kills his verse. My only down thing about that, we probably didn't need 5 minutes at the end of Heather Hunter having an orgasm.
That's true.
But no, that was on my honorable mentions because I think that's a fun song too. And I wanted to put one from Tongues on my honorable mentions. All Night, Every Day. Number 7, what is yours, Diz?
Off Sacrificial Lamb, Stay on Your Toes, featuring Mastermind. The beat was done by DJ Butter. First of all, Mastermind kills it on here, but Esham has like this new flow on here. It's much different than it was like on Dead Flowers, of course. And he's starting to lead more into, I don't know if it's a quieter voice or something, but the flow that he has goes perfect with the beat. I used to play this on repeat. I remember back in the day, man, I just loved this beat. But the song is one of my all-time favorites. I almost forgot completely about it, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna check out Sacrificial Lambs. I didn't think I would find anything on here, and then I was like, oh, I forgot about this song. I love this fucking song. So, and hey, hearing Mastermind and Esham together is always bonus, man. Stay on your toes.
Sacrificial Lambs is the last Esham album that I really, really, really like. And like I was telling you before we started recording, I listened when I'm going through these albums, I listen to Sacrificial Lambs and I instantly didn't go to the next album. I listened to it again because I enjoyed it so much. It was kind of a return to the classic Esham, but in a more modern at the time way. And you're right, he maybe was a little quieter or laid back, maybe more confident in his flow. He didn't feel he had to yell with his lyrics, maybe. But I love Sacrificial Lambs. There was only a few songs that I considered skips. All right, we are at number 6, and I'm going to 1992's Helter Skelter, another title track. The song Helter Skelter, the original version, because on Kill the Fetus, there's almost like you wouldn't call it an edited version, but it's a different version that's not quite as explicit. I don't know if you listen to them back to back, the original version is more explicit or brutal. And I just prefer that one. And it might also be because he, talks about Ice-T in the intro. But this was my jam. When I first heard this album up to that point, this was my favorite Esham song. It's just grimy, lower production value Esham, but just raw, evil. I love how the beat comes and goes throughout. It drops, and each time they bring it in, if you listen close, they add a different element and take another one from the previous drop out. He was so experimental, and I mean, this is 92. He's like 15 years old. Just a fucking great song. I wish I could put it higher. I love this song. I jam to it every time. Helter Skelter. Check out the OG version, but the Kill the Fetus version's good too. There's just less talking about Ice-T, so of course we got to go with the OG. Pun intended. Number 6, Raven, what do you got?
Surprisingly, I stayed on Tongues in 2001. I went with Walking the Flatline because I really love the beat and I like the melody, that the way he rides it, and I like his chorus in that song a lot. One of the only couple of songs that really stood out on Tongues for me.
I remember when Tongues first came out, I was disappointed. And even now, listening back, it's very hit or miss. But I think I've warmed up to it a little bit more now, 20 years later. But you're right. If I was picking 5 songs off it, Walking on the Flat Line would probably be on there. Like I think of that, All Night, Every Day. Mr. Negativity, I think I really like. But
that was an honorable mention.
Yeah,
for sure.
I always thought, I don't know this. We're going to go off a side tangent, but I always suspected Mr. Negativity was a Dice diss, because that came out right after he did the Esham diss. And if you listen to Esham on Mr. Negativity, you talk about, you saying my name on that fucking song you wrote. And if you listen to it in that context, I don't know for sure because he doesn't name him. But if you think, okay, I just knew for sure that this was a Dice diss, it makes sense when you listen to it. So if you're ever bored, there's some homework for you.
He was really hating Esham or Eminem at that time, though, too. Remember?
Yeah, he just Eminem all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, when I interviewed him, because I interviewed him after that album came out, that was a fucking crazy interview. It was Violent J and Eminem that he was dissing in the interview, which is really interesting because Violent J ends up on that record on I can't remember the name of the song now, but I asked him about something about
Panic Attack,
Two-Face like Joe Bruce or something like that, and then he went off on a tangent, caused a huge problem. That interview caused a huge problem for me, problem for him. But I honestly, if he's talking, I would say Mr. Negativity is about Eminem, but it may have been about. But I feel like Dice left earlier. Like Dice kind of sunk RLP. I thought because he stole, or Esham said he stole a bunch of money, which is why Esham had to get rid of RLP and then go to Gotham and then Gotham Overcore. So I feel like that would have been a long time to wait to diss Dice, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, I don't know. My brain always connected. But I also never understood why, Eminem did say, as far as I know, the Eminem line that mentions Esham is, he says, I'm a cross between Manson, Esham, and Ozzy. And I don't know why he took that as a diss. But yeah, he in this era, like every other song, he's dissing Eminem.
Correct. I mean, honestly, I feel like I think he felt like Eminem kind of took, Eminem came out, his first album was like he was a conscious rapper, and then he didn't really make it big until he mixed, the backpack rap with the wicked shit and kind of made something his own. And Esham was like, but you just stole my whole thing, combined it with yours, and all I get is a little shout out on your song, or my name on your song. And I think that's what made him mad. Like, I feel like he felt like the record industry overlooked him, which I think they did for a big time for a while. But then when he got more known, his quality of product just was like Tongues was not good. And I wanted to love that because it had the Detroit 101 song on there, which was, so I'm sure, named after the interview I was doing. And I tried to listen to that today to pick that song. I was like, ooh, no. It's not fucking good at all.
I wanted to love that album too. It's just too bad. So we are on number 6. Diz, what do you got?
Well, my number 6 is Mr. Negativity.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Transition.
And for me, the Tongues record, I love the record. I remember the hype for it. We had just had .com, some Cool Keith, Dayton Family buzz was going on around the label, and they were hyping this record up. I think Esham's pretty good at shooting himself in the foot, though. And, he kind of did that. And some of it's not all just him, but it's media too, and whatever. He does get ignored. But back to this song, Mr. Negativity, sometimes Esham's heavy metal influence tracks are hit or miss for me. So I'm not too much into heavy metal. This one has a lot of guitar in it and it worked perfect, I thought. I think the disses, they're mostly towards the industry, I always thought. I think there's a little No Limit diss in there because he mentioned soldiers and, always trying to bite something. And back then we were all like, yeah, No Limit, man. They got a rapper that sounds like somebody else, and I thought he threw them under the bus a little. The Eminem diss probably, but that was like every other track. But this is I just feel like Esham had a lot of emotion on this track. He was angry. And I thought, rightfully so, Mr. Smith, rightfully so, man. A man hates you, So that's my pick right there, Mr. Negativity.
You know what's great and proves this is a good song is that 3 of us connected different dots to who he was dissing. That's interesting and intriguing to me. And he might have been dissing them all or none of them, who knows? But you're right, the emotion is there in Mr. Negativity. That's one of the standouts from that album. 6, Brad, what's your number 6?
So I just Googled Mr. Negativity lyrics, and I'm pretty sure that wasn't Eminem because it says, but then again, should I just slit his throat for saying my fucking name in that rhyme he wrote? Should I kill your wife and your child for trying to assassinate me and my style? Because there was a whole thing with like saying Haley's name on a track and all that nonsense. So I'm gonna stick with. I don't think it's a Dice diss, but I do think it's an Eminem diss and a pretty clear one. But that's a great song. That is a really great song, and it's interesting. Like for me, when I was getting into Esham, the fact that he was sampling like kind of all the rock tracks that I liked, whether it was, like I said, Steve Miller or Deep Purple or Black Sabbath or Alice in Chains, it, you know, it made it for me, it connected two worlds for me. And that's why Esham just became my favorite rapper like immediately, because I always kind of gravitated towards the most kind of hardcore extreme stuff. I loved, you know, rock music that talked about Satan and worshiping Satan. So when you get this guy who's talking about that on rap and sampling rock tracks, it's just so easy for me to make that jump over there. And honestly, I felt, for me, I felt like when he started leaving that stuff behind, you know, over time, the music quality kind of dropped a little bit. And I can't listen to, you know, anything post Tongues. I've tried to listen to it all, and it seems terrible. And now every once in a while he'll talk about it, that he'll have like God stuff in his lyrics, and I'm just like, nah, you got to go back to that original stuff. But my number 6 is, we've already kind of talked about it. How Do I Plead to Homicide? This story's just fucking cool. I remember being blown away. First of all, like it's got the Steve Miller sample, so it just sounds, I mean, it's a classic Steve Miller song that everybody loves. And then, you know, he's got this great story where he's like, you know, satanic obsessed, black magic ritual, killing people in the courtroom, you know, during his trial. And it's just when I listened to it again, I was like, oh my God, this is why I really like, I put all the shit aside from dissing Eminem and the whole bullshit that happened with my interview, and was like, man, this was the Esham that I fell in love with when I was listening to his music. I mean, this is the shit. Judgment Day, or Judgment, yeah, that's off Judgment Day. Just an amazing fucking record.
That's why it hurt me not to put it on, because the storytelling is just so damn good. So we are halfway through, and I'm going to take us to 1997, Bruce Wayne, 1987. And I'm going with the last track, Gotham City. To me, Esham destroys this beat lyrically. And this might be his tightest lyrical song ever. He just destroys it. He rides the beat with ease. It's a simple but dope hook. And kind of like I said before, Bruce Wayne, in retrospect, really is a bridge between Dead Flowers and Male Dominance, between that more like gangsta Esham going into, you know, Male Dominance is such an experimental album that totally took me off guard when he's sampling like 50s sock hop songs. But you can kind of see the transition in Bruce Wayne. But I always thought the last song, Gotham City, was so dope. It's impossible not for me to rap along. And the third verse, if nothing else, people out there in podcast land, listen to his third verse. He kills it lyrically, kills it, destroys it. Gotham City, last song on the album. Number 5, Raven, what is your number 5?
How Do I Plead to a Homicide? Great song, and I kept trying to get it higher, but somehow 4 other songs managed to beat it out. I always really liked that album a lot, so I had to have more than one track on here, and How Do I Plead to Homicide is definitely a standout on there.
Number 5, Diz, what's yours?
The Rev from Male Dominance. Like you said, this was a very experimental album towards the end of the record. The Rev, I feel like it's a wicked beat. He almost channels his older self on here. You know, the rhymes aren't exactly like 666 or anything, but I don't know if it's a political song or if he's just digging deep into the mind, but it freaks me out, man. It freaks me out. I listen to it. I fucking love the song. His flow is dope on here. The way he produces it is just genius. There's a lot of great tracks on Male Dominance. You know, I'll listen to it and I'm like, yeah, that was pretty experimental, but it's so cool. But this one right here really sticks out to me, the Rev.
Well, I want to take a few minutes to talk about Male Dominance, because I remember this is still an era where I'm super hyped. A new Esham album, I'm like, can't wait to hear it. The first song, I get it. The first song on there, it sounds like older Esham. I'm coming for you. So I'm like, oh, he's getting away from the, you know, more gangsta stuff. The old Esham's back. And then what the hell is he doing? Okay, one weird song, and it totally killed it for me. It totally killed my vibe. I hated male dominance for so long. 20 some years later, I can look at it a little bit in better light. Like, I mean, no one can ever accuse him of being afraid to experiment. I mean, he has done some of the most bizarre ass mixes and songs ever. And Male Dominance is one of those albums like that. But there are some, the old Esham does pop up here and there. But I was curious, do you guys remember your first impression of hearing Male Dominance?
I loved it actually, and for me, like the songs that I picked are like kind of peak nostalgia from when I got into Isham. But I like you at that time. I was actually on the street team for Gotham Overcore and was like handing out flyers and posters, and but I felt like musically, Male Dominance was of like light years ahead of anything he'd ever done. Yes, with minimal stuff, he did amazing, stuff on his earlier records, but then he had real producer, real musicians in the studio. It was all live, like mostly live instrumentation, and it was more, I think, kind of more typical kind of like rap lyric stuff. So it wasn't as anti-religious and crazy stuff. But I thought from start to finish that record was amazing. And then Nodis's www.com came out, which to me is the fucking greatest thing that Esham has ever done, and that Male Dominance was like that stepping stone to get there. Again, I didn't pick any song. I could have picked 10 songs off Male Dominance in my top 10. I love that record. There is not a single song on there, even the most bizarre ones with the most weird stuff on there. I think they're all catchy and great. I think it's an awesome record, and way better than Tongues, in my opinion.
Raven, Diz, do you guys remember your first impression of that? I just find it intriguing.
I thought it sounded futuristic to me, and I was almost like, okay, Isham is the teacher, and I'm just here to along for the ride here, man. And it's a crazy ride. And it grew on me really quick. I know the first impression I had was like, this ain't it, man. This ain't it. And then, a couple listens, I was like, all right, this has grown on me for some reason. Hearing Mastermind and TNT on like some of the cleanest equipment was awesome, man. They just blew me away. And that touch that Santos gave it's like he gave Isham like another level, or I don't know. He really helped Isham peak again. But don't get me wrong, I know why people don't like this record, because it's not one of those Esham pure records. And even up to today's standards, it's still kind of bizarre, the oldies track and then the one that's borderline country even. I get it, but for some reason, it grew on me and I love it. So
When that first came out, Closed Casket was probably my favorite album, period. That's all I listened to for years. Since Closed Casket came out, that was all I listened to. I bore the fucking tape out multiple times. And then I remember feeling so disappointed as I listened to Male Dominance, because it just, I don't know, it didn't feel like Esham to me. Later it grew. Really, as I listened to it, I liked it and appreciated it more for what he was doing. And then you end up seeing he does that a lot. He has those kind of odd themed albums that just stand out and sound different. And I wasn't looking for different when it came out, but I learned to appreciate it as I got older. But I do remember when the day that tape came out, I bought it and opened it up and ripped out the little fucking order form and checked every fucking box and like gave it to my mom, and she's like, all right, well, that's your entire Christmas. That's like $250.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, Esham. And then like 2 months later,
yeah.
a box of like 25 fucking cassettes showed up, and it was definitely like Christmas.
It's just interesting to me. Maybe I'm just a hater. Back on track. I think we're on number 5. Brad, what's your number 5?
All right. Well, I'm the first one to go to the first album, which is amazing to me. Maybe you all have the first album all the way down the top 5, because we're going to spend a lot of time there, at least with mine. And so right after I listened to Judgment Day Volume 1, I think my roommate had Boomin' Words too, or I got it soon after. And I hadn't listened to Boomin' Words after all that stuff went down with the interview, it just, kind of like gave me a whole, and then Esham kind of like to me just ruined his career. Sorry if he listens to this, but I just think anything after Tongues is just a disaster or close to it. So I listened to a lot of this stuff in a long time, and I still knew I was listening to all these songs, just rapping along word for word, songs I hadn't listened to in years. So I know I must have played these songs over and over and over again. But anyways, Devil's Groove off Booming Words from Hell with that super cool, I think Friday the 13th music. And he's like, one line part of he says he's the badass brother with the mind of the devil. And that tape built how the sound of the first three Esham albums was going to be. You had a little bit of the drug dealing stuff on there. You had a lot of the satanic stuff, the anti-religious stuff, and Devil's Groove is one of my favorites.
Here I was complaining about his experimenting on male dominance, but when he comes out with Boomin', there's no other rapper talking about this subject matter, making beats and samples that sound like this. So he really was experimenting from the beginning. I just wanted him to stop experimenting when he made the music I liked, right? So, looking at it that way. But no, that first album is great. And like I've said multiple times, I think Boomin', he's like 14 years old. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy, these rhymes he's writing. We're going to get to number 4, and I'm going to take us away from any Esham solo albums. We ain't even going to do a Nodis album. We're going to 1994, the soundtrack for The Fear. And I'm going with Morty's theme. Now, first off, this is a great soundtrack. Not so great movie, though. But it's all horrorcore artists. You got ICP, obviously Esham. There's a Nodis song, Gravediggers, Flatliners. I mean, they literally found every horrorcore group in 1994 and put them on this record. But Esham's Morty's theme was the lead single, and it, was by far the best song. This is just classic, perfect Esham. And I want to talk about the video. I remember this video, but it was rare to see an Esham video back then. But he walks into a movie theater, and rewatching it, you can see Mastermind and TNT are playing two people in the crowd. But TNT's got his feet up on the chair in front of him, smoking a cigarette, which I thought it was the funniest shit ever. And at the end, as Esham's leaving the theater, he turns into the wooden Morty. If you've seen the bad movie, the evil character is a wooden doll named Morty. He turns into him. But this version of Esham is just my favorite. The Kill the Fetus into Closed Casket era. I love Morty's theme. It gets me every time. So that is my number 4. Raven, what's yours?
Mine is from 1994's Closed Casket with I'll Be Glad When You Dead, Motherfucker. Yeah, I used to sing that so fucking much, and I was doing it again today while I was riding around listening to that song. Like, Closed Casket it was probably still one of my top 10 favorite albums of all time, just period. Listening to it now, I'm surprised that I kind of like Dead Flowers more. That's what I meant. Like, my taste is so different than it was when I was like 15 and listening to Esham. But yeah, I think I'll Be Glad When You Dead is one of the nice standout songs from Closed Casket.
That was on my honorable mention because it is catchy as hell. That's a great song. Number 4, Diz, what do you have?
Number 4, I got Poetry from Tongues. I love that song. I think the way Esham switches up what he's doing on that track is dope as well. It hits hard. I just think it's one of his best performances on the mic in that era, on that record. I've always just loved that song, especially when he's like, "Oh, the wicked shit, you bitch." Man, that song is just awesome. Like I said earlier, man, I love that whole record, really. But Poetry stood out to me as one of my favorites on that album.
All right, more love for Tongues, more love than I thought there would be. Interesting. Number 4, Brad, what do you have?
I'm gonna go back to Judgment Day. This was really hard. Like at one point I almost gave up and just picked out 10 songs off of Judgment Day and Judgment Night. But then, I was like, that's probably not a good idea. But Fallen Angel, this song is so catchy. Like it just sounds so good. And his lyrics on there are just the way he like explains everything, how growing up in the ghetto is like, you know, growing up in hell, and kind of intertwines that. The lyrics are just amazing. Like I just remember being in my college dorm, just listening to that tape over and over again. And when Fallen Angel came, I was like, my God, this song is so fucking good. Like the lyrics are just, they're incredible. For me, that's again classic Esham. The catchiness, the awesome lyrics, and so I had to put this one high up.
This brings us to the top three. And I'm going to go to 1993's Kill the Fetus. I'm going with my favorite song off this album, No Singing at My Funeral. I think this is such a dope song. One of my favorites ever. Just the way it's structured. The first two verses are slow, funeral type vibe, talking about his funeral and how you shouldn't cry. Then after the verse number 2, he hits you with a curveball, and it's like the beat instantly goes fast, and he just goes with a fast flow. It's like he jumped out of his casket and just slaughters the verse. I love the song so much. Just it's structured so perfectly, and I just always loved it. So No Singing at My Funeral is my number 3. What's yours, Raven?
Mine is 1993's Helter Skelter. I went with Helter Skelter. I definitely think it's a little bit better than the Kill the Fetus version. I did make a note also kind of on Kill the Fetus. But that EP version, it was just hard as fuck. And he just goes off on that song. It almost made number 2, but it just got edged out. So I had to go Helter Skelter title track.
Glad you picked the OG version. I don't know how to explain it because the Kill the Fetus version isn't edited, but the lyrics are a little different, not quite as I'm not sure.
It feels less aggressive. I don't know.
Right. Yeah,
I like the aggressiveness, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Good number 3. What's your number 3, Diz?
One Day from Dead Flowers. We talked about it earlier, but it's such an iconic song. You hear it and you don't forget it. The Jehovah's Witness line, of course. You know, back then I was always expecting some shock value from Esham, and this song did not disappoint. You know, the hook about he's gonna die, there's no heaven up in the sky. It's just like, man, you know, it's one of those tracks where I was like, who's around the room? You know, can I bump this? What can I say? I think it's just one of those songs that defines the best of Esham, the best of Esham ever. I don't know anybody who doesn't like the song. I love it. One Day. It's my number 3.
Number 3, Brad, what do you have?
All right, so I also had No Singing / Misery as my number 3. I honestly am really like, and I put that on there when I was listening to it. I was like, this song is so fucking cool, you know. And then I kind of second guessed. I was like, no one else is gonna pick this song. No one else, like, because I'm thinking like Headhunter, and those are the, and like that's fucking cool. That because I like that too. That he like does it slow. And then I don't know if it like switches songs to the Misery song. Like I could never figure that out if it's like that's how it is. But he's like, no singing, let me get that shit straight, you know, and then just jumps into it, and that's fucking awesome. But there's like, I mean, honestly, every song off Kill the Fetus is like that. Just they're all really good. I have like 5 songs listed here, and then I ended up going with that one. And I agree, the Helter Skelter version on the EP is way better. I felt like the Helter Skelter one on Kill the Fetus was the one that was on the video. I thought it was censored. That's not censored. I feel like there was some censoring on it on the
Yeah, there's certain things. It's not censored as far as clean. There's swearing in it, but certain things.
Okay.
So like on the OG one, you'll say like Ice-T, I'm a fucking cop killer. On the Kill the Fetus, he'll say like Ice-T, I'm a killer for real.
Yes.
So it's like they took the shock value back a bit.
Yeah, and that's how it is in the video. I'm pretty sure, because I remember I got the video cassette. Like I remember they were like, very few people got it, but they put out like a Helter Skelter video, and they sold it at one of the shows that I went to. I can't remember, it was in 90, I guess in 93 or 94. And it was like the flyers for the show said like the Helter Skelter video will be there. I remember like me and my friend going up to the merch booth and like, we want the Helter Skelter video. Oh, the guy hasn't brought it in yet. And then we got it. And I feel like that's the version that's on Kill the Fetus is the same one that's on the video.
Good pick. No Singing at My Funeral. So top 2. We've talked about it, so there's not much I can add, but I'm going to 1996's Dead Flowers, One Day. The vibe is a perfect mix of older Esham and Dead Flowers gangsta Esham. Just the raw emotion behind the lyrics, the haunting piano in the background, especially when the beat drops and it's just the piano, gets me every time. He brings it in every way imaginable on this song. One Day, fuck, such a good song. If no one's heard it, who's listening, shut this podcast off and go listen to One Day, but then come back. That's my number 2. Raven, what's yours?
I went with the Fear Morty's theme. It was from the Fear soundtrack. It was also on like the bootlegged and underground album or whatever Esham put out. But yeah, it was a great beat, and I always loved the little chorus and just the way he flows to that. It felt like he made it for a soundtrack. It sounded like he put extra effort in the song, I guess. And it always just that track always stood out to me. And I used to have just the red promo. It said promo Morty's theme, like it didn't have a case or nothing. But the CD I got from a local place called Tape World.
I remember the Tape World ones. We had one in the mall in Milwaukee, Tape World.
Oh yeah,
That's funny.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of Tape World in years.
It just came back to me. The guy's name was Mel, and he worked there
Oh
for
shit,
like
you know his
30
name.
years. Yeah.
Shout
He
out
worked
to
there until it
Mel.
closed.
No, Morty's theme is the shit. I'm glad someone else had it up high. What's your number 2, Diz?
My number 2 is still on Dead Flowers. It's Silicone. I love this beat, man. I tell you, when I first heard this CD, I was in some city out here, and I was all I had was my Discman. I went to the mall and I almost didn't buy this record because I was like, do I want some more devil rap? I don't know. Because all I had was Closed Casket. And I was like, well, I've had Nodis and Closed Casket, so I was kind of like, we'll check it out, why not, And it just blew me away. I listened to this record from start to end, and I was just like, immediately after that, I was like, I am an Esham fan for fucking life. This is the record, man. Probably my favorite record that Esham's ever done. Silicone, I love his flow on it, man. The beat is just wicked. It's like, this is what I love from Esham, is that wicked shit right there. And I think Silicone was one of the best examples of it. The record itself, I'm a guy who started off with West Coast gangsta shit, so to hear Esham make the jump a little bit, on here was welcome for me. And later on, of course, I jumped into his entire back catalog. But where I lived, it was hard to find an Esham record. So all I could bounce off of was like Closed Casket and Dead Flowers and some Liquid Drano. When that Male Dominance came out, the order forms, you bet, man. I was all about that, man, getting my shit. So Silicone, Esham, Dead Flowers, one of the best rap CDs ever made, in my opinion. That's my number 2.
And that is a great point. It's easy for me to forget because I was one state away. Brad, you were in Michigan, in the Detroit area. I wasn't far, so I got all that stuff relatively easy. But especially in the 90s, I mean, no one on the coast really knew who Esham was. So it's cool that you even discovered him in that era and that you decided, you know what, I am in the market for some more devil rap. And you picked up that record.
Like, well, why not? Let's try it.
Why not? One more devil rap CD will be all right.
Yeah.
Number 2, Brad, what do you have?
And I really think that's why Closed Casket is a lot of people's favorites, because that's when he got that
Warlock.
distribution
Yeah.
through Warlock. And it's really just the fact that more people ended up buying that record, because I could never I like Closed Casket, but I could never understand, like, to me, when I think about the first 3 versus Closed Casket, it's not even close. But it's really about what people were exposed to and what people could get their hands on. And it shows what such a great, because what I consider to be maybe more of a mediocre album, people fucking love that album because that's what they're attached to. And of course, I love what I was attached to. And that is where we're going to go to number 2 with the first Esham album. And, it's interesting, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that my top 2 or 3 songs would be from Judgment Night and Day. But when I was listening to it, I was like, you know what? Actually, Esham's booming. Like, even though that was the second album I got into, that's the one that I listened to over and over and over again. And word after word, with the Michael Myers sample. And just like that first line where he's like, I'm not an atheist, but what has God done for me? Oh, he let me grow up in the motherfucking ghetto.
Yeah.
Thanks for nothing, motherfucker. That's for real. I mean, that's just, to me, I mean, I could understand that, and with that wicked Michael Myers thing going on in the background, that's Esham to me. That's that pure essence of Esham. That's my number two. And it went back and forth with my number one. Like, should I put word after word number one, or should I put the one I'm going to choose? I ended up putting word after word as number two.
Amazing song. That was an honorable mention. I love that song as well. I had no Booming Word songs, but I love that album. I had the red tape that's on your shirt, and I played that shit out when I got it. Which brings us to number one, and you were talking about Closed Casket. I haven't talked about Closed Casket today. But my number one is from 94's Closed Casket, Mental Stress. I don't know what it is about this song. Something about this song. It almost puts me in a trance that I can't explain. This is just exactly what I want from Esham, the raw, gritty emotion with lyrics where he's not afraid to say anything. Kind of like you just said, Brad. He'll say anything he wants. But you can relate because, right, we've all had mental stress. We all know what it feels like to be at the end of your rope. I always came to this song in frustrating times in my life. Great sample in the beginning and end, dope beat, dope lyrics. I just fucking love this song. And there was a rare music video of this shot, and I don't think it aired anywhere officially, but I remember seeing it, and I did hunt it down and saw like a really bad version on YouTube. But to me, nothing will top this song when it comes to Esham. It just, I don't know. I can't explain it. Mental Stress had to be my number one. Number one for you, Raven.
Well, my number one, funny talking about, falling in love with the errors of Esham, like
Right.
when you discovered him. The first album that came out in my whole that I ever heard of, was Closed Casket.
Right.
That distribution, I guess, it finally hit my mall, and I gave it a shot because the cover looked cool and I like different shit. And so that was my favorite. I didn't hear Booming Words from Hell or Erotic Poetry or anything until Mel Dominance was out, and I ordered every tape he
The
had in there.
remix.
Literally ordered every single tape he had on there. There was
That's awesome.
25. There was like a Mental Stress single. There was Mastermind, all the Nada shit.
Right.
And so Booming Words never really, like, I don't hold that album as in highest regard as most people because I was like 18 or 19 by the time I heard that shit, and it was old sounding to me at the time, I
Right.
guess. But Dead Flowers now I'd say is my favorite album probably. But yeah, definitely The Wicked Shit'll Never Die. The Eulogy always made me laugh, and it led perfectly into just the hardest opening song that Esham had. That, of course, that was my first album I heard from him, but he opened that album, and I was like, oh shit, this album is going to be hard. You know what I mean? And I used to love every single song. It's the back half of the album is more hit or miss for me now. But yeah, The Wicked Shit'll Never Die.
That was obviously on my honorable mentions. I fucking love that song too. I was amazed it didn't hit my list. So many classic Esham lines when I think about it. Diz, what is your number one?
Well, my number one song is Closed Casket from Closed Casket. First Esham tape I had. I didn't really like it necessarily at first. I was like, what is this, man? It's devil worshiper, whatever. But I stuck with it, and I appreciate Esham's art, of course. I actually had a girlfriend back then who stole the tape. Well, her friend stole the tape and then called me and said, what the fuck? And gave it back. It scared the shit out of him.
That's awesome. That is an
That's a great
awesome
song.
story.
Yeah, I'll never forget it, man. I was like, yeah, that's my tape. That's Closed Casket Esham, and I need that back. This song right here, Closed Casket, the last song of the record, man. Like, if you want to hear Esham try really hard, this one he's trying hard, man. The music is hitting, the beats are bumping, he's switching it up. I love all the voices he brings in, and his lyrics are hard, they're raw. He's really going at it, man. If you look at the lyrics, like I just pulled them up, and it just reads like some crazy poem. Like, I'm like, this thing should be like framed for the future. It's just a phenomenal song, and I think it's number one for me, best song ever that Esham's ever made.
And that was also on my honorable mentions. I agree. It's a really good song. He really starts and ends that album strong as hell. I mean, from The Wicked Shit'll Never Die to Closed Casket. Number 1, Brad. What's in your heart and list?
Esham's Boomin'.
Boomin'.
The first song. And I know this has like no devil shit. It's just a kind of a cool song about Esham selling crack and what happens after, but it's got that chorus where he talks about what would life be without a real life rhyme. Not real life. And actually it's a really great story. And the reason why I picked it when I was listening to all these records, I hadn't heard this song in years, and I could rap it perfectly with him, like right from the beginning with, yo man, let me get one of them big motherfuckers and shit in there. And I was like, holy shit, like, yes. And this is not even like devil worshiping Esham. It's totally like crack selling Esham. But just a really cool story. It's a cool beat. It actually is I guess interesting to me because, like, yes, Esham's Booming does sound kind of old. Like, you can tell it's made, pretty simply, but because that's what I listen to so much, like, it just sounds still amazing to me, even though I can look at things like Dead Flowers and go, wow, the production on that is just leaps and bounds better. And then you get to Male Dominance and www.com, and each time the musicality of it gets better. But for me, just that first tape is incredible. It's awesome.
It's great that we got all kind of different eras, except for the most modern, which I wasn't expecting anyone to really hit. And as always, honorable mentions for those first-time listeners. If a song did not make anyone's list, but I think it should at least get mentioned, I just quick give it some love. What I thought was going to be my number 1 was actually on a Nodis album, but it's just Esham rapping, and that's No Fault Insurance. But it didn't even make my list. I love that. Another Nodis one, Down Since Day One / Pain. It's kind of 2 songs on 1 track. Then go into his solo stuff, Pussy Ain't Got No Face, Some Old Wicked Shit, Rocks Off, Cruising Down 7 Mile, 13 Ways I thought would hit someone's list, Symptoms of Insanity, Sunshine I thought would make someone's list, 666, Make Me Wanna Holla, the original Better Ask Somebody, Coming For You, his Psychopathic Days. I got Gangsta Dedication off the A1 Yoa, Bang, and I also got Migraine Headache off of Acid Rain, which features ICP that I kind of liked. What are we missing from honorable mentions?
The entire Closed Casket album.
Right.
So that is almost my list.
Yeah, Drive You to Suicide from Closed Casket, crazy track.
Man.
Hey, You Still Ain't Shit to Me on Bruce Wayne.
Another roundtable talking about the wicked shit, Unholy Black Devil, going a little underground here. As always, I thank you for taking the time to talk about a trailblazing, unique MC who's still doing it today. Just put an album out not that long ago. Bump some Esham, everybody. Peace.
Still a B-boy, from the old to the new, still a B-boy. Too bold for the school, still a B-boy. East Coast to the West, B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be blessed. Still a B-boy, from the old to the new, still a B-boy. Too bold for the school, still a B-boy. East Coast to the West, B-boys worldwide, we supposed to be